Lean Construction Ireland. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 33rd webinar, the topic of which is Cultural Challenges of Implementation of LPD by Alan Mossman from the Change Business. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will consolidate and ask Alan in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is Alan Mossman from the Change Business. An experienced lean design and construction consultant, Alan originally trained as an architect and then in management and organisation development. After working in local government and higher education in a variety of roles, he has worked as socio-technical systems consultant since 1988. He only returned to construction in 2001 to apply his knowledge, understanding and skills in design, collaboration, systems, thinking, organisation development, variation, quality and lean. Based in the UK, he has coached design and construction teams adopting lean thinking for clients in the UK, Netherlands, France, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Germany, Turkey, Canada, India, South Africa, New Zealand, Peru, Chile, Colombia and the USA. Alan was a founding member of the LCI US Education Committee developing lean, last planner, integrated project delivery, target value design and big room training packages for use by LCI communities of practice and others. He has published papers on lean construction, last planner, integrated project delivery, target value design, prefabrication, just-in-time and construction logistics. He's currently working on a new approach to creating a culture of improvement in design and construction that brings together aspects of his work over the last 40 years. In 2003, Alan helped create the Lean Construction Journal, was editor from 2003 to 2012, and is now editor-at-large. He is a member of the Lean Construction Institute, the International Group for Lean Construction, and the European Group for Lean Construction. He was a founding director of the Lean Construction Institute UK, serving for 5 years until 2010. He's been involved in organising the Lean and Public Sector conferences in 2013 and 2015 to 2019. He's the principal of the Change Business, a UK-based lean design and lean construction consultancy. I will now pass you over to Alan to start his presentation.
Thank you very much, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me and helping me explore this important topic. I'd like to start, before we get into the presentation proper, by asking you to tell me what you want to get out of today. And if you can summarize that in just 5 words, I'd really appreciate it, and use the questions area to do that. So I'll wait for a minute or so while you type those in.
Okay, Alan, we have a few answers in for you at the moment. An attendee has come in saying insight into other lean approaches. Another attendee has said understanding LPD. Another attendee has said better understanding of LPD and people. How leadership is a potential single point of failure. Key drivers, barriers, easy early wins, case studies. Creating a CI culture, gain more knowledge of lean construction, understanding how to apply lean principles, last planner. Another attendee has said, I'm interested to know your thinking evolution from the last 5 years. Encourage lean participation in traditional contracting arrangements. Approaches to changing culture. What are the barriers and challenges of adopting IPD? cultural adoption of LPD, barriers to lean in general, upgrading knowledge, better understanding on this subject, and challenges in adoption.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. So this is the subject I've chosen to work to, switching to lean project delivery. It's all about culture. And I will hit some of the things you have said you want. I'm not sure I will hit everything. So if there are other things, then we will have to find some other way of addressing those, maybe through some of the other webinars that LCI Ireland have already had, and possibly through future webinars. I've chosen to use this image of a Viking longship here because I think when the Vikings came to Ireland, there was probably a change in culture many years ago, and now it's the Americans who've developed this lean project delivery system, and we need to be adapting the way we do things here in UK as well as in Ireland and the rest of the world, and learning from what the Americans have developed, what the Australians have developed with the alliancing process that started off in the UK sector of the North Sea, to make a significant change in the way we not just do construction, but the way we procure construction. Unfortunately, I don't know whether we've got any clients in the audience today, but if we have, then you can do something really valuable in pulling lean project delivery from your supply chain and standing really strong. It was 16 years ago, at about this time in 2004, that a conference was called by Sutter Health in Northern California. They had a work program which would take them through till about 2012 of about $13 billion worth of hospital, medical office building, healthcare construction in a seller's market. And they had a drop dead deadline from the state of California to make sure that in the event of the big one, the major earthquake, hospitals in the state would continue operating, would be able to continue operating with little or no disruption following the earthquake. And it had become very clear that that was not true for a very high proportion of the hospitals in the state of California. They called a meeting with about 200 members of the construction site supply chain in California, and presented to them what working in a lean way would mean. And they invited a contractor from the Midwest, Bolt Construction, to come and talk about what they had learned from doing lean in their market. And they said to people, we are only going to procure on a lean basis. And so if you want to stay on our supply chain, you need to join our journey towards lean project delivery. Out of that, and out of various other initiatives that were taking place within the Lean Construction Institute in the United States in 2003, 2004, a new way of approaching contract project delivery developed. And that's what we know today as lean project delivery. So why do we need to switch to lean project delivery? Firstly, the dominant culture in construction is broken. LPD and the dominant culture are like chalk and cheese. You can't change chalk to cheese. You can't change cheese to chalk. You've got to decide what you want and go for it. And there's an immediate reason as well. After the COVID-19 crisis, construction will have a lot of catching up to do on existing projects, and we need to find a way to deliver our projects more cheaply with better margins so that we are better able to handle crises like the COVID one. So I hear some of you asking, how can you be sure that the dominant culture is broken? What customers say they want is they want things delivered on schedule. 75% customers want projects delivered on schedule, 68% want it delivered to budget, 61% delivered quality, 54% safety, and 25% want a good level of service during design and during the construction phase. What does the sector do in practice? It delivers projects late, about 70%, over budget, 61%, less scope than customers want. It's unsafe, it kills far too many people. It systematically separates design from assembly and construction. It keeps corruption in plain sight. Teamwork is unreliable, lots of siloed working, delegates risk, massive amounts of rework. Nobody learns, mistakes are repeated, and customers are dissatisfied. So let's look at what happens in the dominant culture. We think about what's going on in terms of organization, commercial terms, and operating system. In the dominant culture, the commercial terms are transactional, untrusting, bilateral, and exemplified by design, bid, build, and EPC. The operating system is based on the critical path method. So professional planners plan the work, and then the work is pushed into production. The workers are told what they are expected to do because that's what the schedule says. And the organization is often characterized as divide and rule, command and control. So that this is a commitment-free zone where everyone is trying to optimize their own bit and maximize profit. The whole thing is organized around profit, and the whole thing is coherent. There's no question about that. So that's the dominant culture. So it's based around DBB and EPC contracts, and it systematically separates design from production on site. It's the construction sector is the only sector that still systematically separates design from production. There have been lots of efforts to change things. So the introduction 20, 30 years ago of design build contracting was an effort to address that. But in the process, the owner lost the client lost the independent advice of the designers, engineers, architects, whoever. They only got advice from the lead contractor. So then there was a partial separation in design build. The designers worked for the client and then were novated to the constructor. And at that point, the client lost the independent advice of the designer. So let's look at the lean project delivery way. This is organized around addressing users' human concerns. And the users will include the people who, the finance director or whoever is going to sign the check, pay the bills for the construction. But here, everyone is working together to improve the whole, to create flow, and to deliver value. The organization is collaborative. The commercial terms are relational and trusting, and they link design with construction so that the constructors are sitting at the design table and actively engaged in the design. This produces a much higher level of costing during the design process. It makes it possible to have target value design as part of the target value delivery process that's inherent in lean project delivery. And the operating system is based on short-term planning with the last planner during both design and construction. So it's possible to make the work flow. And flow is a really critical part of what lean is all about. So this whole system is aligned, integrated, and optimized. And like the dominant culture in construction, it's coherent, but it's also profitable. While the dominant culture's focus is on profit, value is the focus for lean project delivery, and that's the value experienced by the end users of the facility. Whether it's a road or a railway or a hospital or a house or whatever, it's the value for the end user that is the focus. "16 years ago, lean project consulting developed 5 big ideas which were at the heart of what Sutter was doing. And this was presented at that 200-person workshop in Northern California that I mentioned right at the start. And I'm going to go through these five big ideas, and it'll begin to link together some of the things that you've been asking about. First, we need to collaborate, really collaborate. And that's the green circle at the top, if you like. The next circle is about building relationships. We need to focus on building relationships. If we do that, and I'm sorry about the animation on here, I hadn't realized it was this bad. It helps develop innovation. So if we can then see projects as networks of commitments, and this idea of networks of commitments is something that's inherent to the last planner system, that will help us build trust. And that will, and then if we learn from action rigorously, so we have everyday learning, and everyday learning is also part of the last planner system, so that we learn something today that will enable us to do something different tomorrow. We're not making the same mistake over and over again. We make mistakes, yeah, we learn from them, and we do something different. With learning rigorously from action and seeing projects as networks of commitments, that helps us to increase the reliability of the process. And then we seek to optimize the whole. You remember I said the traditional cultural model, everyone is trying to optimize their own bit. And that makes flow in the process very difficult. So the two of the founders of the lean construction movement, Greg Howell and Glenn Ballard, spent years making improvements in construction processes, and were continually confounded by finding that the overall process didn't improve. And it wasn't until they recognized that improving the whole was needed to be their aim, that things started to change. So improving the whole and improving continually leads to the whole process being more competitive. So those are the 5 big ideas. Collaborate, really collaborate, build relationships, see projects as networks of commitments, learn rigorously from action, and optimize the whole. Those are the 5 big ideas. The items in red are what follows from doing those actions. So I only learned this definition of lean about 2.5 weeks ago. I was in a meeting with Renee Smith, who is Chief Exec of Make Work More Human across in Washington State. And I think this is a really, really useful definition. Lean is a human-centered philosophy of work and of production. Lean creates a culture of respect, trust, improvement, learning, and collaboration. Lean uses a set of principles, a management system, methods, and tools. And lean results in better safety, time, quality, cost, flow, customer and employee satisfaction. So if all or virtually all of those are important to you, then lean is probably where you want to go. And lean works in any contract environment. So you can use it, and lean construction was initially developed in the context of design bid build and design build and construction manager at risk, and so on. But it works best in lean project delivery, integrated project delivery, alliances, and other relational agreement settings. And the lean operating system for lean project delivery has as its foundations, pillars, and principles, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we need to be using collaborative procurement, and that's why it's really important to get the clients involved in this process, because the rest of the construction industry doesn't have any control over what clients choose to do. We have to create an environment in which clients will want to do it. And then there's communication and conditions and teamwork. So the foundation and the pillars, the foundation pillars and principles rather, this diagram that I'm about to show you, its first half of it is there, is from the Toyota Way 2001. The Toyota Way 2001 was a Toyota car company document which talked about how the way Toyota did work. So continuous improvement is really important, but almost more important is respect for people. Literally respecting people, but also creating teams in which they can work effectively. And notice the subheadings for continuous improvement. Target condition, be really clear what you're trying to improve in the shorter term, and improve every day. And Genchi Genbutsu means going to the workplace to study the way work is done so as to improve it. And we're going to come to that more later. And there are 3-4 things here that you can start doing to help improve the way work works. PDCA, plan, do, check, act, a simple application of scientific method. Some people call it PDSA, plan, do, study, act. Reflection, stopping and thinking. Do again, do better, which some people call plus delta, and I wish we could do it at the end of this webinar. And using the Ono circle to observe what is happening at the workplace. So those are the pillars. The principles, the most commonly presented principles, are those from Womack and Jones. Value, and value is what the customer wants. Value stream is the process by which value is created. Flow, which is the ideal way that the value stream should go. Pull, and perfection. Perfection is the same as continuous improvement, or continual improvement if you're a Deming fan. And pull is that work gets pulled into production rather than pushed into production. And I'll be saying more about that in a minute. I think there are 2 more, and I know that Womack and Jones, when they were writing their book, were told by their editor that they got too many points in their principles, and so they cut some out. The 2 I think they cut out are involve everyone and look at the whole system. I think those are both really important. If you're not involving the workers in improving the system, the chances are you're missing some things that need improving, and you're maybe changing some things that don't need changing. You need to get them involved. So collaborative procurement. The book on the left, Collaborative Construction Procurement and Improved Value, by Professor David Mosey from King's College in London, was published last year, and I think is really, really important. There are over 50 case studies in there. It's really important that we procure a team that will work as a team. It's totally unreasonable to expect procuring a team on the basis of lowest cost will produce a winning team. There are some examples where, despite procuring on lowest cost, they have really worked well together. But if any one team member decides they are going to cover their arse in some way, the whole collaborative ethos will break down very, very quickly. It's important to incentivize teamwork and to link design and construction. So moving from the dominant culture on the left to lean project delivery on the right requires a system change, and lean, IPD, LPD is a system change. Now, I'm going to ask you to use the questions box again. If you have any questions about what we've covered so far, anything that needs clarification.
Alan, I do have a question in.
Yes,
the question is how to apply lean construction in managing material on the site.
How to apply in managing materials on site. Okay. So there is a really important principle in lean, the idea of doing things just in time. So what I have observed over the years is materials arriving on site much earlier than they are required, and then being moved around the site because they are always stored somewhere where another trade wants to work before they can be installed. So one of the things that we will need to do as part of lean project delivery is get materials delivered to site just in time for their installation in the building. If we can't do that, then it's important that to think about whether we can store stuff in, say, a consolidation center off-site. This was done for a number of projects in London. It's been done in Amsterdam and a number of other places. And the environmental benefits are huge, significant reduction in vehicle movements, especially during the day, and a significant reduction in the volume of materials needed, because the materials don't get damaged in between them arriving on site and being installed, because they go straight to the workface and are installed. I hope that's an answer.
Okay.
But if it isn't, then come back and we can deal with it after the webinar.
Okay, I have a couple of more questions. Yeah, there's a couple more so far. How to convince traditional construction mindsets in leadership of the need for change?
Let's talk about, I'd like to talk about that later,
Okay.
and possibly after the end of the webinar. There is a thought experiment that I would love to have been able to use today, which is part of the way of doing that.
Okay, you might be able to take this question then. As the role of the client is key, what is the best approach for developing a client's understanding of LPD?
There is a process called study action team, and getting a group of clients or a client organization reading one of a number of books which are covered in the further reading later in the slide deck would be a way of doing that. There are also a number of clients who are willing to talk about their experience of using this different way with fellow clients.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, right. Let's move on. What is culture? The short way of talking about it is the way we do things around here. The longer way, developed by Ed Schein, is that it's a pattern of shared basic assumptions invented, discovered, or developed by a given group as it learns to cope with its problems of external adaptation and internal integration, that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore is to be taught to new members of the group as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. The way it's taught, it's often not taught in any formal way. It's just a nod and a wink and a nudge from work colleagues as you join an organization or as you join the industry, because the industry has a culture, and then there is a culture within individual companies, and then because there are many companies involved, there will be a separate culture around each project. The variation may be quite small, but there will be differences. Why is culture important? Culture can give you competitive advantage. It influences behavior. Structure determines behavior, and structure is an integral part of culture. And you've probably heard it said that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So the corporate strategy may be going in one direction, but the culture is going in a different direction. And it's culture that wins out. I was at a conference last July in France, and the chairman of Bouygues, one of the larger construction companies in France, was addressing the conference, where quite a number of his employees were in attendance, and he used this as an opportunity to reinforce aspects of the Bouygues culture, using videos and things that he said. So there are all sorts of ways in which culture is established and reinforced, and telling stories is a really important one. Culture plays a critical role in personal and group decision making. And the faster you can make good decisions, the faster you can learn to be successful. So if you've got a poor decision-making system, because that's how the culture says decisions should be made, you're not going to get anywhere very fast. No, I'm not going to tell that story, there isn't time. So what's involved in culture? These are all aspects of culture: purpose, power and reporting relationships, who sits next to whom, who has access to information, who makes decisions and how, and so on and so on and so on. These are just a selection of the elements of a culture. It's a very, very complex system. And these are structural elements of an organization, and they determine behavior. So these elements are continuously changing in response to changes elsewhere in the organization and to changes in the environment. And of course, the environment, all the organizations around your organization are changing in response to changes in your organization and changes elsewhere in their environment. So it's a very complex system. And in a complex system, the same starting conditions can produce different outcomes depending on the interactions of the elements in the system. So some people say, yeah, but construction isn't complex. It may be complicated. So I want to talk about the difference. Complicated, these are all the components of a motor car. It's complicated. It involves lots of different parts that in a way is difficult to understand, but it can be understood. Everything here is predictable, determinate, and leads to a predictable, determinate outcome. Some of you may recognize the photograph that's just appeared. It's a series of photographs of a murmuration of starlings. Makes wonderful patterns in the sky as the birds move around in relation to each other. Others of you will have seen photographs and films of shoals of fish defending themselves against attack by dolphins, whales, sharks, or whoever. And the way they are able to move in a coordinated but entirely unpredictable and complex way. So in a complex system, the whole system is continually adapting to new developments. And we've got lots of new developments facing us in construction. We've got robotization, we've got digitization, BIM, we've got prefabrication, modularization, all sorts of things like that, and we're having to adapt to them in order to survive. And the outcomes are unpredictable and indeterminate. One of the challenges for the construction sector is to make what is currently complex closer to complicated. What's the origin of the words? Complicated comes from the folded together, and complex means plaited or woven together. So etymologically, they're quite interesting differences in the concepts. And the other thing to note is that best practice doesn't work with either complex or complicated. And yet, certainly in the UK literature about construction, there is a lot of talk about best practice. What we have at best is current good practice. And one of the principles, the precepts within Lean is the idea that nothing is made so good that it cannot be improved. One of the principles in the last planner system, for example, is that we can learn something new every day and improve every day. It's really, really important. Why are complex organizations difficult? They're unpredictable, they're unexpected and surprising, and systems that used to be separate are now interconnected and independent. It's really difficult to predict what will happen. Complex systems interact in unexpected ways. It's difficult to make sense of things. The degree of complexity may lie beyond our cognitive limits. And finally, it's difficult to predict. Past behavior may not predict future behavior. This is the context for managing culture. What's common in existing project culture? The organization is seen as a pyramid with senior leaders at the top and the workers who create the value at the bottom. Middle managers direct the workers, and senior leaders define procedures that are designed to make their that's the senior leaders' life easier. Some of those policies and procedures that senior leaders define make the life of workers, and maybe the middle managers too, more difficult. I'll just leave that one out there. Flipping the pyramid is supported by lean thinking, relational project delivery arrangements, and ideas of servant leadership, which I think are really important. And flipping the pyramid will support last planner implementation, collaboration, and the workers managing handovers from one trade to the next. And I don't know whether you've seen a slide in a presentation which says buildings leak where contracts meet or don't meet. It's the handovers where things go wrong. Just like in a relay race, it's the handovers where things go wrong. So flipping the pyramid from the one we just looked at to looking at it this way, where the workers are on top because they are the people who are creating the value that the customers want. Senior leaders may have won the work, but the people who create the value are the workers. And rather than being told what to do, the workers understand what's needed and promise what they will do next week in order to deliver what is wanted. The role of middle managers is to help improve the way the work works. So if workers are consistently delivering poor quality, or if workers are saying to middle managers, we've got a problem here, the way things are arranged at the moment makes it very difficult for us to do quality work, then the middle managers will come in and help understand what it is about the way things are organized that is making it more difficult for the workers to deliver the work. And so you get workers making requests and middle managers helping to improve. Senior leaders should be supporting middle managers who will be making requests to senior leaders. And it may be that the request from the workers needs to be relayed to senior managers because it's a policy or a procedure that they've established which is actually making it more difficult for the workers to do what they need to do. So there will also be arrows like this where senior leaders are giving direction. That's normal. Will need to be part of the organization. And what is clear to me, and has been since my first IGLC conference in 2004, is that the change in lean is most difficult for middle managers, and they are going to need help. Middle managers have been trained, and their experience since they joined the industry has been that the role of middle managers is to direct what the workers do. In this new way, the role of middle managers is to support the workers to do good work. The assumption is that workers come to work wanting to do good work and knowing how to do good work. That needs to be supported. Okay, what's the role of leadership? This comes from Professor Myron Tribus in a wonderful pamphlet he wrote called The Germ Theory of Management. It's available on the internet. And what he says is that workers work in a system. The role of leaders and managers is to work on the system to improve it with the help of the workers. So it's not about doing things for the workers, it's doing things with the workers. So compare that with the way work is now. Leaders tell subordinates how to work and then control them. It's hierarchy, and procedures leaders create to save their own time is bureaucracy. And this is how Toyota organize their workers. The team members are out there on the assembly line. Their team leaders sit very close to them, and they study what the team members are doing and help them learn how to improve the way the work is done in terms of quality, time reduction, all sorts of things. If something happens and the line is stopped, and any team member can stop the line, the team leader and the rest of the team will pile in and they'll try and solve the problem. If they can't solve the problem within a finite amount of time, a group leader will appear and help them to try and solve the problem. If they can't solve it, then the assistant manager will come in and help solve the problem. So if this happens up in Derbyshire on the production line at Toyota there, and the line is stopped for 15 minutes, a signal goes to North Wales, where they produce the engines for the Toyota cars manufactured in the UK, and it stops the line in North Wales because there's no point in producing more engines than they can use. So what's the equivalent system that we can design and build to use in construction? And I know that there are a number of organizations now that are beginning to think about this, about how this can be changed in construction. We can develop something similar to this in construction. And this is really important because this is about improving quality. And one of the things that Dr. W. Edwards Deming, one of the quality gurus, he spent some time with Toyota in the 1950s. One of the things he noted is that if you improve quality, your costs will decrease. There's less rework, fewer accidents, mistakes, delays, snags, and so on, better use of equipment and materials, so your productivity improves. You can then capture the market with better quality and lower price and stay in business and provide more jobs. Okay. What you can't do is simultaneously improve quality, improve productivity, and reduce cost if you either start by trying to reduce cost or to improve productivity. You have to start by wanting to improve quality and forget about cost and forget about productivity, because they will take care of themselves. Okay, I now want to, if I can do it, move to here. So how can we improve so that we can get lean project delivery going, focus on what the customer wants, make the work that delivers what the customer wants flow, and continually improve the way the work works so as to increase the rate of flow. These are the basics. And what's going to help? Remember, this is a very different paradigm, and collaborative relational contracts and agreements are really important. They encourage good teamwork and collaborative risk mitigation and open discussion of problems. You'll be using production management tools like Last Planner and Tact Planning. You'll be focusing improvements at current bottlenecks. If you make an improvement that's not at a bottleneck, the overall rate of production will not change. So focus at bottlenecks so that work flows ever faster. Level load the work pipeline. Governments are starting to understand that this is important. The cyclical nature of demand for construction with the economy is part of the reason why construction productivity is relatively low and improves very slowly, because it's difficult to justify for many construction companies to justify investing in research and development, in new technology, and in training for casualized labor. Digitization is really important, BIM, virtual design and construction, and that will really support deeper collaboration and digital prototyping, particularly in the context of relational contracts. Prefabrication and modularization, automation and robotization, focus them on the bottlenecks, and together these will create greener and more sustainable design, but we'll also see this feeding back to helping workflow ever faster at the bottlenecks. I'm sorry I've gone on for so long, but I'm going to stop there. I'd love to hear your questions.
Thanks, Alan. We have a question straight in there. Can you please explain concept of Last Planner?
I can, but not in the next hour.
Okay, that's fair enough. Another question in.
No, that was a bit unfair of me. Last Planner is a way of engaging the workforce, particularly the last planners, the trade foremen, in planning the work that will be done when they fully understand what the constraints are on site. So if I can just go here, right, this book here, Power to the Edge, is a book about the military. It's from the Command and Control Research Group in the US Department of Defense. And what Alberts and Hayes are saying is that we really need to move decision making to where the information is. And David Marquet, in Turn the Ship Around, sorry, I shouldn't have clicked on there, in Turn the Ship Around, and General Stanley McChrystal in Team of Teams, over on the left at the bottom, both talk about this as well. All three books were written at about the same time, or describe what was going on at about the same time. Power to the Edge was published, I think, 2002. Marquet took command of his submarine in 1999, and McChrystal was in Iraq in 2003. And one of the things that Marquet talks about, which I think is really important in terms of getting to grips with the last planner system, is moving decision making to where the information is, rather than moving information to somebody who you deem to be senior enough. By moving the decision making to where the information is, people can respond much more quickly and act on the information, provided they've been suitably trained. So Last Planner is a way of systematically planning work, getting progressively more and more detailed as the time for the work to be done becomes closer. So you start with an overview of a project at the milestone level, and then so using the milestones, you break the project down into 2 to 3 month phases, and you plan those, and you plan the handovers within the phase between the trades, and then you make the work that is to be done in the phase ready systematically 4, 6, 8 weeks ahead. And then once it's made ready, and by made ready I mean all the constraints have been removed so that it is possible for the responsible team to start and finish the work that is to be done, because all the right information, tools, equipment, materials, people are present, and there's safe space to work, there's a safe environment to work in, and there is a shared understanding of the conditions of satisfaction. And the conditions of satisfaction are something that you'll learn about when you learn about the Last Planner system.
Okay, perfect. There's another question here, Alan. Where is the industry today on the journey?
I don't know in Ireland. In Northern California, I would think it's probably under 10%. In UK, it's under 5%. In the whole of US, it's probably under 5%. Mm-hmm. It's very bitty, and there's a long way to go. The other thing I notice is that people who have recently started on the journey think that they are farther down the road than people who have been doing it for years.
Okay. Okay, I have another question here. Can LP work without TAC or vice versa?
Without TACT, T-A-K-T, is that?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, it can, and it has. TACT is relatively new. TACT will integrate very well with the last planner system and is very, very useful. But you don't have to do TACT to do Lean.
Okay, we'll take one more question, Alan, because we're a little bit over time. People may have meetings. How do I convince the senior leaders in my organisation in the project I work on to make a start?
I would start by asking around the project what is going well. And after people have got fed up with telling you what's going well, they'll start telling you what's not going well. And that information can then be reflected back to the senior leaders on the project and say, and so that you can say to them, and so is this something you want to do something about? Because if it is, I've got some ideas. I think I'll stop there.
Okay, perfect. Just if people are interested in more presentations on LPS, we can refer you to the LCI website. There's some presentations up there presented by David Umstadt and Paul Ebbs. Also, LPS is a topic that we'll be looking at in the future for webinars. Alan, I'd like to thank you again for your presentation. It was very insightful. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. We will send out the information shortly via LinkedIn, Twitter and newsletter for the next webinar taking place on the 20th of May. The topic of May's webinar is Leadership for Lean Project Delivery, and it will be presented by Kevin McHugh from Mace Group. Thank you again from Alan and myself on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. You can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and through the website leanconstructionireland.ie. And thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and stay safe.
And can I say that Kevin McHugh is really excellent speaker. I thoroughly commend the next webinar.
Thank you, Alan. He'd be delighted to hear that. Thanks a million and take care, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.